That's incredible. I'm curious on this piece. Emotions. You've been talking a lot about that, and I'd love to hear what is emotions exactly?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, what I know about emotions is that I think they are really beyond anything chemical, beyond anything, electrical happening between neurons. I mean, these are manifestations, but I think emotions are consciousness. I think emotions,
Uh,
I mean, especially an emotion like love is definitely something very, beyond our understanding of what really happens in the brain. And I think that's also true for anxiety, because in some ways, yes, you can say, well, there are some biochemical changes happening in the brain, but it's still something that goes beyond that. And I wish there would be something would allow us to measure what happens in our field, in the electromagnetic field, and that would then really show that what changes with our emotions goes beyond the physical form. Now, what's interesting is that, of course, for example, with anxiety, there are studies that have shown that we can smell anxiety from other people, that there is something, and it's still not really clear how we do it, but when we are they call it smelling, but basically what happens is you are around other people that have anxiety, and you are also picking up this anxiety yourself without ever having a conversation with those people. And so there's just something that gets transferred, and so it's a fascinating thing to really realize that there is a mind and there is a body. Mind in this case meaning the nervous system and the neural pathways, but then there is consciousness. And I think consciousness is something that is still not explored or fully understood for what that actually means in that human form that we are.
wow. That's like fascinating to me that there's just the unknown, but we do know that there's something beyond that we reference as consciousness.
Yeah,
So powerful.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, I just did a show about death, and there I did some I looked into near-death experiences, and you could say, well, this is also a form of consciousness. What happens when people from different countries and different cultures describe exactly the same thing when they had near-death experiences, which is you're leaving your body and you're looking down on your body, and you're hearing what people are saying in the room, and what is that what leaves the body. And I think that's the consciousness I'm talking about, and I think that is also at times really something that has a lot of influence on emotions, or maybe even the root of our emotions, and has certainly a lot of influence also on how we feel in our body and whether we are connected or not. Are we connected to that consciousness, or are we disconnected from it? Because all we
Wow.
know, we cannot just live in our heads. This whole talking about you have to be connected to your heart, you could translate also, well, you have to be connected to that consciousness that goes beyond that physical what we know or what we are identifying ourselves with.
Right. One thing I've loved about your work is that you created so many tools and ways to do this work. I mean, you have this breakthrough program that you've created, and I'm just curious, like, how does one start to even make connection with this consciousness and this place that we're talking about, to heal and to move beyond the
Yeah, that's
busy
a
mind?
really good question. I think it's probably for every person a little bit different, but
Hmm.
I mean, certainly meditation, which you know all about, is one way to, create a space for the consciousness to present itself and for you to listen to or connect to the consciousness. But I also feel like that this is happening when we are removing these layers that we have created. There is a process I help people with where they go back and back and back and back in time to basically before they were even conceived, to really connect to their consciousness. And it's really fascinating to go through this process, because 9 out of 10 people see exactly the same thing, which is just this amazing light And they may come from complete different belief system, but there is a light and they feel connected to this light, and it feels so warm and welcoming, and it feels like they are bathing in an ocean. And it's why do we have, even though we have no pre-knowledge about what other people have experienced, why do we do the same or have the same experience when we go to this place? So that's one way to connect to that consciousness, just to separate yourself from everything that you in this lifetime may have identified yourself or experienced, and just go a little bit further beyond that. And another way is just also really connecting to nature. I feel like the purest connections we can have is with nature, and is also with animals. When we are with an animal, they are authentic, they are real, there are no lies, there are no pretenses. And I think our truth, which is what I think this consciousness is all about, really connecting to our authentic truth. When you are connecting to something that is authentic and truth, you're much more calibrating with that than maybe with another person who also just is insecure or struggles with their own truth. So animals, plants, nature, mountains, whatever, that always can give you a way to reconnect with that, what goes beyond our understanding of self.
Wow. You're bringing me to that place just by speaking about it. And I feel myself going into la la land going, oh, I just want to be with the trees and the nature. It's so transformative just to think about it like that,
Yes, that's true.
I'm curious from you, like, how does one find the balance of this? Because I mean, if I let myself go to this place of just always being in nature and connected, like, I almost feel like nothing will ever get done because I'm just constantly in this bliss state. Is that like the ultimate goal, or does one need to find balance? Like, what does that look like to integrate this into your life?
I think we have to trust that our nature, our truth is like the universe in itself, very expansive. I mean, when you're
Mm.
putting let's say there is a seed, and the seed would be your truth. You put the seed in the ground. It's not just sitting there happy being its truth, but it wants
Mm.
to grow. It wants to expand. It wants to express itself. I think once you have connected to your truth, I mean, I don't know if I really know everything about my truth, but I know that I'm really having glimpses of it. And that doesn't make me want to just be in la la land. It makes me actually feel like, oh, now I know what I'm here for. Now I have,
Wow.
passion for something. There is a purpose out there. And so it's really not the comfort zone what the truth gives you. It's much more the foundation to grow from and expand from. So there is no need to be afraid of. I think if you want to stay longer in the truth place, that usually means that the batteries are empty and you need to really spend a little bit more time to connect to that. But there will be a time when you just have that, like the heartbeat, there is this contraction. So take time to contract, but then there's the expansion, and that's exactly what's going to happen there too with that truth.
Wow.
You want to
Yeah.
expand, you want to share, you want to be a part of it all. And so I think that's very, but then it's not driven by ego or not driven by fear or not driven by shoulds. It's actually driven by joy and driven by, really seeing yourself as an integral part in the web of life and knowing that you have a meaning and a purpose and, just you belong. That's a whole different way of expressing and living than if you're
Oh my
just
gosh.
going, through the motions. And I think that's unfortunately what most people have to do or feel they have to do.
Right. It's so interesting that we come into these bodies and kind of forget the essence of who we are. Like, I mean, I've heard people reference this before, and we got to go, a lot of us, through these struggles to find this place or to discover this place and maybe know it for the first time even. Why is that? Have you given any thought to, like, why is it that people come in and they have to go through this?
I don't know that they have to go through this, but I think it's very cultural. I really think that our culture, which is very much, driven by, well, as soon as you barely can talk, you have to already learn something, you have to go to school, you have to follow rules, you have to measure
Yes.
up to expectations. I mean, we don't have freedom to explore. It's like you have a total connection to your essence when you're born, but soon after there are all these expectations and all these ideas on you and all these things that you are forced to do whether you like it or not. So I think we are stifling our truth. We are, and I can say it for myself, I have a very good recollection of my childhood because I think I had to be so aware because my parents were fighting all the time. So I was always like, looking out for what's happening around me. So I remember how much I was connected to something which is light and, easygoing and happy-go-lucky. And then, maybe at the age of 8 or 9, it totally shifted into now you have to really conform. You have to, look for how to be in order to get approval. And all of that, what was so magical. I mean, I was really, as a child, I saw energy. I saw I woke up at night and I could see the wall in its molecular structure, which was really, and I've told this to my mom, look, there are all these little, spheres. And she said, oh, you just have a fever. So, but I am sure that there was something there, but I totally lost it. When you go into this, oh my God, how do I need to perform now? Or what do I need to do now? All of this, magical connection to your truth just disappears.
Wow,
And I think you can refine it, but I believe there are cultures that we may deem more simple, but where there's more space and more, just openness and more room for people just to be in their true nature. And there are some schools like Waldorf schools, and they certainly still foster this, natural unfoldment of a child's self rather than trying to just squeeze them into some cookie cutter form. But it's fortunately not so common.
Oh man, I totally just want to go live in that state. Like, it's amazing. New culture update.
Yeah.
Do you get a sense like that, although we're in a real peak of anxiety in our culture, like at some point this is going to have to happen, like the simplification of things in order to kind of remember who we are. Do you see any of that kind of happening in the future?
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, I don't know if, it's like this, on the one hand, you could say we are getting more and more distracted and we are getting more and more somehow off track. I believe in this whole idea of the age of Aquarius and the Piscean age that we come through. It's, I know, kind of esoteric, but I really like the idea because I can see it, how the world right now is split into the old forms of holding on to power and control and money and, what's in it for me. And there are other that are much more about compassion and connection. And I think that other way of living is also more simple, is more about, let's, simplify how much, simple as how many grocery bags do you take home from the store? None, because you bring your recyclable bag with you. And so, there is also this other mindful about nature, mindful about, how much footprint you have here on the planet. So there is a tendency there, but it's very split. I think it's even 50-50. And I don't know which side gonna eventually win out. And I am concerned sometimes that the side that's still in power creates so much damage and creates such a disconnect from truth that it's going to be a long time to recover from that. But we'll see. I mean,
wow. Just love it. What I'm so appreciating about you is just your dynamic range from this background of science and study in that world to like just even the esoteric references that you make. Like, it's quite a range that you hold in terms of your being. Like, your whole person is really alive in this. Is there anywhere along the way that you see a marriage between like the science and your background there and the more esoteric? Like, what are you discovering in terms of that? Is there any connection between the two that you're finding?
Yeah, obviously quantum physics is what comes to mind, right? Where there is just this, I think quantum physicists are just fantastic because they always are curious to look beyond that, what we can even imagine. And what I just find so fascinating is about that field, this this field that connects us all. You know, in esoteric teachings, it's all about oneness and unity consciousness and being connected with everything there is. And you know, quantum physics talks about, you know, how there is a almost like a, you know, like a soup of energy that we are all in, and that basically our thoughts can travel through the soup of energy and reach other people through, you know, that connection that we have. It's not completely proven, but now, you know, just recently when they found this fifth force, I'm not sure if you heard about that, which is
No, say
basically,
more.
well, you know, basically there are four forces, you know, electromagnetic, gravity, and two nuclear forces, and now they found a fifth force, which is completely unknown. And it's like what happens when particles fall apart. This one force that emerges is a force that's connected to more the dark matter energy, and it's kind of a particle that's afraid of light almost, and just, you know, goes to the darkness. And it's very interesting. But what they talk about is that the hope for a unified field where really you know, this what I'm just talking about can be more explained through finding this other force, this fifth force, which, you know, may explain exactly what I say about this connection to others, and you know, this really being able to just feel that you and I, even though we are far away from each other right now, are actually in our consciousness and in this energy directly linked in. And so those things I know can really, you know, make esoteric ideas scientifically proven. It may take a while, but I don't think esoteric, you know, often is just poo-pooed as wishful thinking, you know, just like, you know, this idea of the law of attraction. But I think
Yeah.
all of those things are, you know, just something that physicists are lacking behind in proving that this is exactly what can happen and what we should use more. And we just have not been necessarily, you know, allowing ourselves to do this, because we said, well, this is just, you know, not scientifically backed up. But wait 50 years, there will be much more to come about that.
I mean, being on both sides of the coin for you, why is there such a, I mean, I have friends that would just call this all woo-woo. They'd be like, this whole esoteric thing's a bunch of woo-woo. Like, why is there such a drive in our culture to scientifically prove something versus the power of just believing, just being open to believing?
It's really interesting. And you know what, I mean, I was a researcher, so I mean, I
Yeah.
know that science is basically contradicting itself all the time. So whatever we are thinking science explains, 2 years later there will be another research that says exactly the opposite, and whatever we believed before will
Oh,
actually
man.
have to be unbelieved. So if we are thinking science is really the truth teller, no, it's an opinion. And it's an opinion
Mm.
that also just expands along the way. It's a belief. Right now you believe this because you have some research. Well, next year you're going to believe something else because some Japanese professor found something else. So I don't understand why we are holding on to science so much, as that's what we need to really believe in. I think, you know, healthy skepticism, some kind of, you know, good head on your shoulder and common sense is certainly reasonable. I'm not telling myself I can walk in water or jump off a bridge and be, you know, getting wings all of a sudden, but there are certain beliefs that you just feel so connected to, and you have evidence in your personal life that they are true. Why not really holding on to those beliefs? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
beyond me. Sometimes I feel like we are arguing more for our anxiety than we are arguing for feeling good. I mean, I see this sometimes with my clients, that they're way more invested in proving themselves that there is a reason to be afraid than they are invested in arguing for the leap of faith and trusting. And that's a
Wow.
habit. And we just have to really turn that habit around, because it's definitely not helping.
Wow. Well, speaking of turning that habit around, you've got a few things that that really stand out to me. You've got the Fear and Anxiety Solution book that you've written, right?
Right, right.
Can you share a little bit about that book and what is the solution to fear and anxiety? You got to read the book, of course, but
No, I mean, basically, what I wanted to say in this book is based on what I have, you know, experienced. There was like 10 years of working with clients, that we don't have to be afraid of anxiety, and that anxiety is not something that is an enemy or a dark force inside of us, but it's something that we just need to understand and connect to, and that it often has the internal representation of a child. You know, that's really often the anxiety is like a child wanting to just know that the past doesn't repeat itself, that we are safe, that you, the adult, know what you're doing, that, you know, again, it's about the self-protection in this regard, that those beliefs of we only are lovable if, or the world is a bad place, or we are not good enough, that those beliefs are not true. So it guides you through different steps that address those often childhood-rooted causes of anxiety, and helps you to resolve them. And then it helps you also to connect to your essence. So there is one meditation in it, a process in it that really goes to the core in your heart, to that essence in your heart, and it goes through the cells, and it goes down deeper and deeper down into basically the molecular structure, down into the atomic structure, and then you connect to your inner light. And it's a really nice way for you just to also see as you go through the book that it's a journey. Overcoming anxiety is not a battle or some, you know, I hear people going to psychologists and they are saying, well, sorry, you have to live with this for the rest of your life. There is nothing you can do. And I think that's so terrible to get that message. And so the book is really about seeing anxiety as more a catalyst, and ideally as a friend and not as a foe.
Wow. That's powerful stuff. I want to take the meditation that you just mentioned now. and then the breakthrough program that you've created. Tell me a little bit about that as well. I'm totally fascinated by that.
Yeah, and the breakthrough program is basically that what I just described. It is a journey from, you know, you seeing yourself as an anxious person to you seeing yourself as an empowered person. And, you know, it leads you, I believe, also to your purpose. You know, a lot of people that I'm working with just saying, help me to get rid of my anxiety, but then they realize, oh, actually that's what I'm here to do, and this is what I want to really more share in the world. And so they change their jobs, or they write a book, or, you know, they start you know, I had a client who was dealing with anxiety. She lived in Kuwait, and she grew up in Jordania, and then she realized, you know, what she really wants is empowering women. So she started like a coaching program for women in the Middle East to be more empowered and be more confident. And so those kind of things happen in the breakthrough program, where you really see the anxiety just bringing you home. And then when you're at home, you read your own book of truth. You figure out what you're really up to here, and then you go for it. And that's kind of the exciting journey.
That's amazing. Is the breakthrough program an online program, or is this done in person? Or how does it?
It's in person. So there is a video program that people can do, but that's like, you know, through different steps and sessions, but that's online. And then there is in person meaning like with Zoom, Skype, phone, these kind of
Sure. Things. Absolutely. Yeah. It's quite amazing the technology we have these days.
That's actually really nice. Yes, I have to agree with that.
Amazing. Those of you listening, I want to encourage you to go check out Dr. Friedemann's website. So I will post that in the show notes, but it's drfriedemann.com. And you can find out about his book, The Breakthrough Program, doing some work one-on-one through this amazing technology. If you're not in the same place, you can find out all of these amazing offerings and stay connected to him. I feel, Friedemann, just being around your energy, and we talk about that soup, that connected soup you mentioned. I always feel so good when we connect. You've got this beautiful energy about you, and it's like almost as if I see myself every time we talk. There's a oneness here. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Likewise. That definitely is a mutual feeling. We have a good soup going on between us.
Yeah, this is a good soup, especially up here in Canada where it's freezing cold. Yeah. Wow. Thank you very much for joining me today on the podcast. And I look forward to staying in touch, and hopefully you'll come back and visit us again soon.
Oh, absolutely. It would be my pleasure. Thank you very much.